On a small farm, in dense thickets of burdock, the mother duck found a cozy place to build her nest. She waited for the chicks to hatch. One sunny morning, the eggshells crackled and tiny fluffy ducklings were born. There was only one egg left, the largest one that did not want to crack. The duck began to worry that something was wrong with him. She sat down on the egg again and decided to wait a little longer. The duck mom gave all the heat she could. She thought that this chick must be the most beautiful since she has been incubating him for so long. Soon a chick hatched from the last egg, but it did not look like the rest of the ducklings at all. It was much larger, and its feathers were gray. The duck mom was upset to see such an ugly son. But she hoped that someday he would become like his fellows. The rest of the ducklings laughed at him. They considered him disgusting and did not want to play with him. The next morning, the mother duck went with her children to the lake. To her surprise, the ugly duckling swam as well as others. The duck then brought her little ones to the poultry yard to introduce them to society. She told the ducklings about the rules of behavior with local inhabitants. The duck presented its brood to the noblest fat drake, but he attacked the ugly duckling, and she was forced to protect her failed chick. Fat Drake ordered to drive the freak out of the yard. Mother assured that he would grow up and become like other ducklings. Unable to withstand the bullying and humiliation, the ugly duckling left the poultry yard. In search of a safer place, he came across a beautiful lake, on which there was no one. And the duckling decided to stay here to live. Time has passed. Despite his loneliness, the ugly duckling was happy that no one offends him. And then one day, a beautiful white bird with a long neck flew to his lake. The ugly duckling did not know what kind of bird it was, but he looked at it with admiration. He loved her with all his heart. How a duckling would like to be like this lovely white bird. Winter came and it started snowing. The ugly duckling saw white snow for the first time. He was delighted with this sight. But due to the fact that the winter was very snowy, it was very difficult for the duckling to find food. He had to walk around the neighborhood in search of food. He was cold and tired. So the ugly duckling got to the farmer's house. When the peasant saw a thin and unhappy chick, he felt sorry for him. The farmer decided that he would keep the duckling with him until he was fattened and matured. Spring has come. The owner took good care of the chick, and he grew up a lot. The duckling already needed a lot of space, and the farmer decided to release him to the lake. Standing on the shore of the lake, the ugly duckling looked at his reflection in the water. And he could not believe his eyes. He could not recognize himself, and thought that there was someone else behind him. And then the duckling realized that the wonderful bird in the reflection is himself. To celebrate, he thrashed and swam all over the lake from edge to edge. And suddenly he saw the same beautiful white bird with a long neck, which he had seen once before. The ugly duckling decided to swim closer to her. But the beautiful bird was not frightened, but on the contrary she smiled and winked, and together they swam across the lake. The ugly duckling couldn't believe his happiness. Passing by, a fat drake on the shore of the lake said that he had never seen such a beautiful young swan in his life. What was his surprise when he found out that the ugly duckling that he once drove from the poultry yard was a beautiful swan. It turns out that the ugly duckling was a swan from the very beginning. An egg accidentally fell into a duck's nest. And when the beautiful young swan returned home, then everyone in the poultry yard became very ashamed that they had once offended him because of his appearance. A long time ago, in a small kingdom, there lived a king who loved to dress up more than anything else. He could spend whole days in the dressing room, showing off in front of the mirror in new dresses. So, for every occasion of life, whether it be a trip to the theater or just breakfast, the king had prepared the best fabrics and robes. And then one day two swindlers arrived in the kingdom. On the streets of the capital, they heard about a king who loves to dress up. And then a cunning plan ripened in the heads of the deceivers. They decided to pass themselves off as weavers capable of making a wonderful fabric, better than which nothing could be imagined. And so that the king would definitely pay attention to them, the scammers spread a rumor that their fabric had magical properties. It is completely invisible to those who are impenetrably stupid. When the monarch heard about the incredible weavers who appeared in his kingdom, he was very happy. After all, at last he had the opportunity to understand which of the royal advisors and subjects is stupid. The next day, the king summoned the weavers, showered them with gold and ordered him to sew the best dress from magic fabrics and gold threads. Then the deceivers took all the valuable materials, took the gold and set to work. They sat down at the empty royal machines and began to pretend that they were sewing a magic dress for the king. The rumor about the outlandish fabric spread throughout the kingdom, and everyone wanted to see it. The king himself was no exception. He really wanted to take a look at the dress, but he was afraid that he would be stupid and simply would not see the fabric. And so the monarch decided to send his wisest advisor to them, the most intelligent and honest among all.
Oh yeah!
When the old advisor came to the workshop, he saw how the deceivers were working behind empty machines. They lifted up a non-existent dress, straightened invisible folds, and extolled fake designs. Then the counselor, frightened that he would seem a fool, pretended to see the dress too. Returning to the kingdom, the old man did not find the strength to admit that he had not seen anything. Therefore, he reported to the king that the fabric was magnificent. The minister followed the advisor to the weavers. He looked at the empty machines in the same way, and was afraid that he was actually stupid and unworthy of his place.
Oh no!
So the minister went back to the king and praised the fabric even more than the counselor did.
Nice!
Finally, the king decided to admire the curiosity himself, until it was removed from the machine. He came to the weavers with a whole retinue of courtiers. But neither the monarch nor the advisors saw the dress. However, each of them began to admire the outfit, imagining that everyone else was actually seeing the fabric. Satisfied with the result, the king awarded the cunning Knight's Cross and granted them the title of court weavers. And then the day came when you could put on a new outfit. The rogue weavers volunteered to assemble the king themselves. They dressed the ruler in non-existent trousers, then a camisole, and an invisible kaftan. And all the nobility who watched the process only said how beautiful the costume was, and how it went to the king. Finally the monarch went out into the street. The subjects had already gathered around, hoping to see the magnificent attire of the king. However, none of those who came did not admit that they saw nothing. When suddenly a little boy appeared from the crowd and exclaimed that the king was naked. The crowd picked up these words, and everyone around began to laugh at the ruler. The monarch realized that he had been deceived, but continued his march, as befits a king. And his retinue still supported the mantle, which in fact did not exist.